Welcome to the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies, where there's always another secret.
Welcome back, Sixers, to another episode of the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies. This is episode 115. Today is August 1st, 2022. I'm Bill, and I'm joined, as always, by my combative co-hosts, Amy and Jordan.
Hello.
Hello.
They're putting up dukes all over the place right now. But before we get started, I do want to remind our listeners that the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies is not a spoiler-free podcast. Normally, that would mean that if there is something in the Cosmere that you haven't read and are worried about hearing spoilers, you might want to go read those first, then come back and join the discussion. And guess what? That's true tonight as well. Because tonight, we are doing another deep dive into a specific scene, and this is a juicy one. We're going to be talking about the Duel, capitalized, in Words of Radiance. If you've read the book, you know which one I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
For those of you who listen to the podcast recordings or watch the videos on YouTube after the fact, we do want to remind you that you can join us live via chat as we record each episode at www.twitch.tv/InkeepersTable. We record episodes every other Monday night, starting at 7:30 p.m. Pacific Time, 10:30 p.m. Eastern, so please join us and take an active part in the discussion. The Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies is made possible by the support of our listeners and patrons. The show will, of course, continue to be free, but if you want to help us out, head on over to patreon.com/Cosmere Studies. Even $1 or $2 per episode is very, very helpful to us as we continue to work to improve the show. Patrons do get immediate access to our Discord channel where you can talk about the show and the Cosmere with other listeners. It's a great community. We've got a lot of incredible discussions, great people over there, and you get early access to bonus episodes, exclusive access to other bonus content, and other good stuff. But guess what time it is first?
Game time.
Close. It's time for the Cosmere Thing of the Week. Okay, so for this week's Cosmere Thing of the Week, we have an infographic by user Thider16. I'm wondering if that's a Thidecar reference.
I'm suspicious of that.
On Reddit. It's actually pretty cool. It shows a height comparison of a lot of the major players in the Cosmere. So what this user did is they actually gathered art from several different artists to create this chart. So we want to also acknowledge those artists as well. Mm-hmm. So Tinsoon was drawn by Blaze Malefica. Manny Padilla drew Vin. Alex Allen drew Wax and Sazed. Ellis Gardor drew Kelsier. Claren King drew Shalon. Katie Payne drew Hoyd. Steve Argyle drew Yasna and Dalinar. Shurai F or Shuraif, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, drew Adolin and Kaladin. And Derek Murphy drew Rock. We'll link to the post in our show notes, so if you want to check that out. And also, there's if you go to the post itself, there are links to all of these individual artists, and there's also a conversion to the imperial system since it's all listed in centimeters here. And so
poor Americans,
if you're like us uncultured swine over here in America, you can go check that out to see what that means in feet and inches.
What it means is Kaladin is 6'11".
What?
He's a big boy.
So the thing that
Wow.
So you ask an excellent question. You might be saying, how can Shalon be as tall as Kelsier when she's only 5'6"? She says that in the story. But Brandon has said feet in Roshar are bigger than feet on other planets.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my.
Because they're bigger, because the gravity's lower and there's a higher oxygen content. Everything grows bigger. And so while Shalon is short by Alethi standards,
she's still not short.
She's taller than Kelsier and Wax, who are considered very tall on Scadrial, but I'm Kelsier's height at 5 foot 5'8", 5'9".
Now, all this said, there is a lot of debate to be had over the accuracy of these numbers. This is one person's estimates, and you know what? I think it's cool for relative heights.
So Shalon and Kaladin are actually basically exactly correct. Because Brandon has
has given the numbers.
Yeah, he said that Kaladin would be 6'11" because he said a foot is larger, and we have Shalon's size. We know exactly how long a foot is relative to our feet.
Right. But, for example, the Scadrian estimates aren't necessarily like there's a lot of debate to be had around these.
Yeah. Well, and especially because the biggest problem with it is Hoyd can't be quite considered exact because we know he can do some shape shifting.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he's used for some of the comparisons, and we don't know if he would try and shorten himself to blend in on Scadrial and make himself a little taller to make himself blend in amongst the Alethi.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that we can't be 100% sure of, but I don't know. I went deep on this trying to figure out how. I was shocked. I didn't realize Kaladin was taller than Dalinar.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah, by a significant amount, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think it's because Kaladin slouches.
He probably does.
Until he gets into a battle stance. Because if you look at the picture the person draw, Kaladin is absolutely shredded.
He totally is, yes.
He's got an 8-pack going on here.
Yep.
Oh,
yep, he does.
So stepping away from this, though, Jordan, how is the Cosmere reread going?
As I said last time, it's on hiatus.
Oh, it's on full hiatus.
Yeah, I said for about a month.
Okay, I missed that. Well, I'll still check in to make you remind our listeners.
So now you have a chance to catch up. If you want.
It's true. Where, if they want to catch up, where will the next section cover?
I don't 100% know. I'm thinking we might have to do all Shadows of Self as one thing, which is making me sad.
So basically, if they want to keep time, then they'll want to finish Shadows of Self.
Yeah.
Cool. Sounds good. All right. Well, in that case, it is time to actually hand over the reins of discussion to Jordan because he's going to lead our discussion on the Duel.
Right. So if you want to follow along, this starts in Words of Radiance chapter 56 and 57.
I just realized I should have gotten the Yu-Gi-Oh! It's time to Duel sound drop, and I'm so ashamed of myself.
Well, if that's what you want, you're gonna love what our thumbnail is for this episode.
Oh boy!
Oh boy!
It's not quite done, but you're gonna like it. Anyway, for those of you watching through YouTube, you know. Anyway, I wanted to get a little bit of the pregame before they did this because I thought there was some very interesting stuff. Because we start off from Kaladin's perspective, getting all his soldiers in place to guard because they're worried the assassin might show up in the middle of the fight because could be a good attack of opportunity while everyone's distracted looking at a fight. You can sneak in.
Mm-hmm.
And you get to see Kaladin's really good at doing his job because you see him, not getting too distracted until he looks at Orem, and then he gets really, really, really distracted.
Yeah.
And starts walking towards him. And they're like, Kaladin?
What you doing?
And he's like, go do this, go do that. Nothing was wrong. Nothing was happening here.
Nothing to see here. Go do your job.
We also get a scene that has a lot more importance later on where he's telling Moash, I'm going to send you out on patrol.
Mm-hmm.
And Moash is like, you can't do that to me. He's like, yes, I can. And it turns out Moash is going to be correct because of how Kaladin's going to blunder at the end. But the part I really want to focus on is Adolin's pregame warm-up.
It's so cute.
So, do you remember what the things he does?
So I remember he's supposed to eat like some chicken curry. He's supposed to have like his mom's necklace. Is this his mom's necklace?
Yeah, and he doesn't have it.
And he forgot it. And so he's like, dang it. No, I'll be okay. I'll be okay. And he also gets a glyph made for him, and Navani was ready to do it, but Shalon had already done it. And then there's like a moment.
I bet you squeed at that anyway.
Yeah, I did. I was like, oh, it's so cute. I'd forgotten that Navani was like so suspicious of Shalon, but I can also understand that to a small extent. But
Shalon's the one who brought her news of her daughter's death.
Yes, there's definite bad vibes in that sense, even though Shalon wasn't trying to be bad, but
Navani wasn't behaving fully rationally, and she recognizes that.
Yeah, she's starting to soften up a little bit. She's like, The calligraphy's okay. Just kind of like, yeah, maybe it's okay.
And then there was one more thing. The big one. He talks to
forgot.
his sword.
Oh, that's
Mhm.
right. He's like, well, let's just do this. Basically,
I've-
like he doesn't feel like he gave it the best pep talk.
Again, in my opinion, this is one of the best pieces of evidence that Adolin will become an edge dancer because he's remembering those who have been forgotten.
He's remembering his sword. He's remembering Maya.
So I wonder, there's part of me, his pregame ritual is interesting because it encompasses the ritual of a lot of different NHL goalies.
Oh, absolutely.
Lots of sports
The
things,
particular talking to the sword, Patrick Waugh, who most people consider the greatest goalie of all time, he was very superstitious. He would not talk to the press on game days. He would always talk to the pipes of the net, and he would never step on any of the lines with his ice skates. And so you get into these routines, and like even if the routine clearly doesn't do anything, it's about getting yourself in that same headspace you were in every other time you did something.
Mm-hmm.
And so whether or not it works, they'll tell you it works because it's worked in the past.
Or it can be even a self-fulfilling prophecy because if you don't do it, then you get into a headspace of, oh no, something's wrong, everything's horrible, everything's going to crash. And it inevitably does.
Well, and so we get to the part with Adolin walking in, and he's glad that there's dark eyes there because the dark eyes are louder. And it shows an interesting character growth moment because Adolin thinks to himself, he used to not like battles because they were too loud, like duels, but now he prefers the noise because it reminds him of battles.
Yeah.
And he's realizes I've become a soldier, which, that's what his father was trying to get him to be.
Yeah, I mean he's a duelist at heart, but he's also a soldier now. Yeah.
Yeah, he's both. And he's good at both. The other thing that's interesting that it's not really done too much here. This was all Shallan's idea because she was reading through the histories, and she was the one who came up with this entire plan. And so this is when we get to the Shallan part at the start of the next chapter, where she's suddenly realizing, oh no, this is all my fault. I'm supposed to be the one to navigate this intrigue, and I've already failed.
Yeah.
But Adolin at the same time also fails because we get the moment where he's like, all right, who is oh my goodness, I'm now blanking on his name. What's the name of the guy he's dueling? The main one.
Oh, is it
Relis.
Relis?
He's like, all right, I wonder who Relis is gonna bring, and then 4 people walk in.
And he's like,
it's
no.
It's just that moment. It's it's just like, oh no.
Yeah.
I've made a horrible mistake.
Yes.
Well, and then Dalinar says it as well, and Sadeas gets just as smarmy as ever been.
The only time Sadeas is more smarmy in a way that I wanted someone to kill him was when someone then killed him.
Yeah, it's kind of like you asked for it, dude. Yeah.
Well, and specifically, Adolin several times this thing. He's like, "Oh, if I could just get my hands on Sadeas," and it's just knowing what's gonna happen later on in the book. You're like, "Don't worry, you will.
Your moment will come."
Like that moment. I know this is a slight departure from what we're talking about, but that moment at the end of Words of Radiance, it reminds me of the scene in Deep Space Nine where Q shows up and Cisco decks him, and Q's response is, Jean-Luc never hit me. And he looks at him, he's like, I'm not Jean-Luc. And this, Adolin is just like, I'm not Dalinar. I'm not going to follow this stupid code.
And it's just especially with Sadeas, who's just this snake who always gets away through just, rules lawyering. And it's just like, we're in the back alleys. It's prison rules right now.
Let's bring it.
Yeah.
No. Anyway, then there's the, as he's going through looking at everyone, to figure out who they are, the moment when he finds out that Yakimov, someone he considered his friend, is there.
Yeah. And he's like, oh, how much did they pay him? Or what did they bribe him with? And
he's never gotten his sword. And so it seems that
he's like, well, it's worth it. Let's do it.
It's like, so you do have a number.
Yep.
Yeah. Every what is it? Rule of acquisition number 87. Everyone has his price.
Something like that.
I think it's something like that. Anyway, but no, it's when we get to that, I love the scene where Dalinar is, they start going through the intrigue as quickly as they can because they're realizing, oh no, what do we do? And if we surrender, we lose all the shards, and
And it's like 6 sets or something like that. It's a lot that they would.
Well, they would lose. It'd be at that point they'd be losing both Renarin and Adolin.
Basically everything, every shard that they own.
Yeah.
Which Dalinar wants to go in and fight, and Elhokar, in a rare moment of,
savvy.
Savvy. He's like, no, you're just gonna lose my stuff as well.
And he's like, and by the time you got down there, it got in your armor.
It's too late.
It's too late. And he's like, and so if you go down there without your armor, they will maim you or kill you.
There's something there's a wisdom to cowardice at times, which especially at this point, Elhokar is still a coward.
Yeah.
But there's a wisdom to understanding when you're beaten, and look, they're beaten at this point. Because they don't know they have Kaladin,
in the wings,
in the wings, and they don't, and technically they cheated, because they have to fight with disadvantage, but Shallan finds a way to cheat.
Yeah, but that's just
so technically it's an even fight, but no one's going to find out. So
there wasn't any actual fighting that she did. She just basically heckled.
Yeah, she just
from inside
to mess with somebody. It's fine. It's kind of like, shining a light in somebody's eyes or whatever instead.
I mean, basically, she just did the, hey, bada, hey. That's all she really did.
You're not allowed to go inside someone's armor to do it, though.
There is no rule written that says you can't do that.
Okay, we're not doing Airbud the Duel, okay?
There is no rule that says dogs can't fight in shard duels.
Well, I mean, Sadius kind of was twisting and bending the rules just by like, well, it's just... more people. You didn't specify how many.
Well, so that's it, but that's on them. Like, that's one of those.
They should have.
Anyone who's ever played any sort of pen and paper RPG knows you don't leave any wiggle room around PCs or the DM. Someone's going to abuse it. My favorite being our friend Shiosk, who was playing Paranoia and was getting upgraded. So at the moment he had no limbs, and a fight breaks out. Paranoia has some weird stuff that could happen. Okay. And he's like, I'm going to join the fight. And the DM, how? And he's like, I do have skills in unarmed combat. He's like, if you could narrate this, go. And he can narrate this. He's insane.
DMs are worse than Jins.
Yeah. But anyway, see, where was it? What was the page? I moved to look at something else. And I'm trying to get to the part where Vasher's
like, you're not in a corner. He keeps telling
him he's trying to get
Adolin out of his head.
So, yeah, because Adolin's backing up into the corner because he's like, I can't get surrounded. And this is his whole plan. And then this is the moment. He's one at a time, lad. One shout from the stand seemed to separate from the others. Was that Xyl's voice? You're not cornered. Relis stepped forward in a quick motion, testing Adolin. Adolin danced away in Wid's stance. Certainly the best against so many foes, with hands holding the blade in front of him, positioned sideways with 1 foot forward. You're not cornered. What did Xyl mean? Of course he was cornered. It was the only way to face 4. And how could he possibly face them one at a time? They'd never allow it. Relis tested forward again, making Adolin shuffle sideways along the wall, focused on him. He had to turn somewhat to face Relis, however, and that put Abrobadar, can't say this guy's name, moving up the other way, wearing orange in his blind spot. Storms. They're scared of you, Xyl's voice, drifting again above the crowd. Do you see it? See it in them? Show them why. So one, I wonder if he's doing something with breath to somehow make his voice carry. We've seen him do weird stuff with breath before. Like he can do stuff.
Who knows
breath.
If all he does is awakening at this point? He may have picked up a couple extra tricks as well.
We don't know.
but I'm going to assume for now it's all he has until we see further. But we've seen him use breaths to make people forget things. So I wouldn't be shocked if he has some other tricks up his sleeve. This is one of the longest living people in all the Cosmere.
Yeah, he's been around for a while.
But it's interesting, again, Ziel, for someone who likes to pretend to be, not involved and at the edges and never at the center, he's once again very involved and trying to help a student.
Every time I try to get out, they pull me back in.
Right back there. But I mean, it would be hard to not want to help Adolin, because I'm sure he cares about him to some degree. We don't know how deeply, but it would be terrible to watch your student one against four.
One, as much as Ziel pretends to be, impartial,
aloof, and
he clearly likes the Kholin family. He respects Dalinar for being a good leader. He respects Adolin for being a very good student, and Renarin for being a very willing student. Like, he openly praises him throughout this book, just showing like how humble he is, and he'd kill for most Light Eyes to be like Renarin.
Open,
And so he wants the best, and so he goes on the offensive. And it's at this point where they start to figure out, okay, we can't get him out because the fight's already started, and we can't, I can't go in. Will anybody else go in? And Renarin jumps in. It's like, oh no!
But he has no shard plate on, so he has a shard blade.
And worst, he has the wrong sword. The one that makes him hear screams in his head. So that's fun.
So, I mean, considering all he's doing a good job even being out there doing the little bit that he is.
Well, and considering he's got his own, anxiety and other sorts of issues going on. And so you add in disembodied screaming.
It's not great.
Yeah.
It's not going to help your fighting abilities.
Well,
Not
and to
so
make
much.
it worse, so I'm going a little out of order with this. To make it worse, we have this part. Adolin's head rang from the blow. He had almost done it. He had let himself grin as they beat on him. 4 at once, and he had almost done it. I yield, he said, voice muffled by his helm. They continued attacking. He said it louder. Nobody listened. He raised his hand to signal the judge to stop proceedings, but someone slammed his arm downward. No, Adolin thought, swinging about himself in panic. The judge could not end the fight. If he left this duel alive, he'd do so as a cripple.
Yep. Because I can't. What did they do to make the judge mad? I can't remember what it was.
It's not that. It's not mad.
Well, no, he made the judge mad though, because remember he had each of the previous duels he had done in some other way, and she considered him to be making a mockery of it.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
That he.
Now they did turn her.
Technicalities, but not.
They clearly bribed her.
They did bribe her, but she was very susceptible to being bribed at this point because she was ticked at Adolin.
Yeah.
But to the point of being willing to let them cripple someone, that's pretty low.
Well, the thing is, he's been winning things. He's argued against her each time, saying, I won this duel on what she considers to be technicalities. The first one, she's like, you didn't, each time she's like, you didn't do it right. He's like, I didn't break any rules.
Yeah.
And so she's thinking he doesn't care about the spirit of the law or this sport that I care so much about. She sees him as a menace. And so she's just like, all right.
You get crippled, then so be it, just kind of, and I get paid for it too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's one of those things. I wouldn't be too, worried about it if she took a tumble off Urithiru. Anyway, there's one thing about, he makes a mockery of it too. If they cripple him, I don't care. It's like, oh, okay, you're a horrible person.
Yeah.
But at this point, she's thinking to herself, he's brought it on himself. I don't agree with her.
Yeah.
But the rationale, I understand where it comes from.
I hate refs. It's a long-standing thing. I don't trust anyone who likes being a referee. Just seems to be someone who likes to have power. And boy, she flexes it on Dalinar.
Yeah, she's like, I'm king here. You don't get to tell me what to do here.
Yeah. Which it reminds me very much. There's some umpires in baseball that are just downright tyrants, and they think very highly of themselves. And there's one who's talking about, because people are like, oh, maybe we should bring more machines into baseball to help us get things more right. And this guy's like, no, that's ruining the human element. And it's like, people show up to watch the players, the coaches, and the umpires. And I'm like, 2 out of 3, buddy. 2 out of 3.
Not usually.
No one cares about you. You're the ump. Just deal with it.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, as far as being smarmy and just absolutely just deliciously, man, someone needs to kill this dude. Sadius, the dueling conventions don't forbid it, Sadius said, speaking loudly enough for Dalinar to hear. I checked to make sure. Young Adolin can be helped up by up to 2 people. The Blackthorn I once knew would have been down there already, fighting with a rock if he had to. I guess you're not that man anymore.
And suddenly Rock jumps onto the field. All right, I have been summoned.
Can you smell?
The rock is cooking.
This might be a different fight scene, but I would love that. Anyway.
Oh man.
But yeah, and then there's Elhokar telling him, like, dude, be paranoid. He wants you down there. There's clearly going to be an accident if you're down there. Don't do that.
You're too worked up and anxious, and there's too much at risk here. You can't just go for it. You have to be very, very careful on what you're gonna do.
But yeah,
thank you.
So yeah, it's so Dalinar goes, and like I said, what's the judge's name?
I don't remember.
Isto. That's what it is. Isto. And so we have Relis being like, yeah, Adro Badar, Abby over there can't, he's going to keep Adolin busy. So,
he likes him. It's fine. He won't hurt him,
just as long as you give us what we want. And then Adolin just sort of just goes Leroy Jenkins on them.
Yeah.
Just charges in. And I'm just going to read this part because it is so good. This last page of the chapter. Adolin fought the other 3, having cast himself amongst them again. He fought marvelously, but he could not fend off all of them. The 3 surrounded him and struck. The pauldron on Adolin's left shoulder exploded into a burst of molten metal, bits trailing smoke through the air, the main chunk of it skidding to the sands a short distance away. That left Adolin's flesh exposed to the air and to the blades facing him. Please, Almighty. Dalinar turned upon the stands full of spectating light eyes. You can watch this, he shouted at them. My son fights alone. There are shard bearers among you. Is there not one among you who is willing to fight with them? He scanned the crowd. The king was looking for his feet. The Amaram. What of Amaram? Dalinar found him, seated near the king. Dalinar met the man's eyes. Amaram looked away.
Okay,
No.
Let's stop.
Oh.
That moment right there is the chink in the armor that Dalinar had built around Amaram because he idealized the man.
Yeah.
And
he was friends with his brother.
Mm-hmm. Well, and so suddenly
the best reputation.
Suddenly that is the moment where Dalinar starts thinking, okay, this stuff that Kaladin's saying, he might be, telling, there might be something to it.
There might be some substance to this guy being a smarmy little jerk.
Well, and it's something later on when Adolin leaves the prison with Kaladin, and he's like, "Is everything you said about Amaram true?" And he's like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Yeah, I figure." He's like, "I believe you." And he's like, "Why do you believe me? No one else does." And he's like, "Everyone." He's like, "Who's I think really well of. They have black marks." He's like, "My own dad has a whole litany of black marks, and he's the best man I know." Amaram's entire persona stinks of.
It's perfect.
It's too perfect. I've never like anyone who's that perfect. I think is hiding something.
And if you're hiding something with that sort of air of perfection, you're hiding something big
and gross.
And he's right.
And murder.
He is right. Oh no. So then continuing, what has happened to us? Dalinar asked. Where is our honor? Honor is dead, a voice whispered from behind him. Dalinar turned and looked at Captain Kaladin. He hadn't noticed the bridgeman walking down the steps behind him. Kaladin took a deep breath and looked at Dalinar. But I'll see what I can do. If this goes poorly, take care of my men. Spear in hand, he grabbed the edge of the wall and flung himself over, dropping to the sands of the arena floor below.
I always forget take care of my men because it's usually, but I'll see what I can do. And usually people cut the line there, but it's such a good.
But just that line, honor is dead, but I'll see what I can do.
I know.
It is amongst cinematic. I always say this. Kaladin is an utter drama queen.
Oh,
He
absolutely.
He poses, he has one-liners, but
He's great.
man, if he's not good at it though.
He's
The
good.
man has a sense of cinema.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to admit, Karen's got style.
He does. He does. Then we get Shalon's perspective from this, where she's suddenly like, holy crap, holy crap, he's fighting 4 people. Oh no, this is my fault. I should have noticed this. And that does highlight something I do find interesting about just the entire Alethi society, because they do have very, very, set roles for the genders, especially for the Light Eyes. Obviously, things get blurrier as you go down the social hierarchy. But as she realized, I'm supposed to be the one figuring out the intrigue, and I utterly failed him here. Like, that has to be horrifying.
Oh yeah.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
this was her idea.
Yeah.
She said, do something spectacular. He did something spectacular.
Well, and her, like, even her glyph word she burned for him was excellence,
Mm-hmm.
which, leaning into this whole idea of style.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem with style is sometimes you get tripped up by little details.
Mm-hmm. It's too flashy.
Yeah.
Gotta have substance.
And so it's just this whole thing. And she's like, maybe I'll go down there. No, that's insane.
Just like that wouldn't go well if I tried that.
Well, I mean,
and then she
technically,
sends-
and this is before we realized, technically, she does have a shard blade.
yeah, but no training whatsoever and no play.
That's not what I'm saying, though.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is the thought makes sense, because that's why she's thinking I can go down there, because it's not just a matter of somebody needs to go down there. It's I have a shard blade.
Yeah, and I mean, if she had, I think that would have broken off a lot of their focus, because they'd be like, "What do we do?" There's
Honestly, they may have ended the match.
Yeah, because it might have been like, "Whoa, we're not risking going on stuff with her here."
But it makes sense that the thought came to her, because again, it's not just somebody needs to go down there and save him. She, there's I have a shard blade. She doesn't address it because right now she is not.
She's not
focusing on that.
Yeah.
This is definitely a point of avoidance, but she's, it makes sense in retrospect why she would think that.
Mm-hmm.
No, but her section ends with her, basically pleading with him, "Don't die," and then just the line, "Someone else dropped to the sands," and then it switches to Kaladin's perspective. And it's just, I just love this whole line. Again, he thought, remember him coming to Amaram's rescue so long ago. This had better end differently than it did that time.
Yeah.
And it's like, yes, but no.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't mean it's better.
It will end with you in chains, but
it will also end with you receiving a set of shard plate that you get that you
give away to
someone else.
You don't want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, his life.
Oh, poor Kaladin.
But okay. One of the shard bearers, Relis, the one in the black armor, trailed Stormlight from a crack in the vambrace on the left forearm. He glanced at Kaladin as he approached, then turned back away, indifferent. Relis obviously didn't think a simple spearman was a threat. Kaladin smiled, then sucked in some Stormlight. On a bright day like the sun blazing white overhead, he could risk more than he would normally. Nobody would see it, hopefully. He sped up, then lunged between 2 of the shard bearers, ramming his spear into Relis's cracked vambrace. The man let out a shout of pain, and Kaladin pulled the spear back, twisting between the attackers and getting close to Adolin. The young man in blue armor glanced at him, then quickly turned to put his back towards Kaladin. Kaladin put his own back towards Adolin, preventing either of them from being attacked from behind. "What are you doing here, bridge boy?" Adolin hissed from within his helmet. "Playing one of the 10 fools." Adolin grunted. "Welcome to the party."
I love it. It's so good.
It's just like, oh, they're making friends and almost dying. It's so good.
Beginning of a beautiful friendship.
Well, and that's the thing. This is where their friendship really begins.
Mm-hmm.
But it makes sense because both of them have a love for battle, and it's a desperate situation. It's the trope fire forged friends.
The thing is, this is the moment where Adolin sees Kaladin and thinks this could be a true friend. Following it, where Adolin goes to, insists on being imprisoned alongside Kaladin. That Kaladin, it's just like he's still in, not squalor by any means, but this means something.
Yeah.
I believe at that point, because when they meet, Kaladin's like, "Did you have cologne in prison?" He's like, "Yeah."
I'm
And it's
not
like,
visible.
he's like, just because we're in prison doesn't mean we have to be barbaric about it. Besides, I had to take showers with cold water. It's just like, oh, you poor spoiled brat. Like,
Oh, but I mean, he was still there. He still
yeah.
tried.
Well, but it was one of those moments where Kaladin finally respected Adolin. He had always had little bits of respect here and there.
Yeah.
But this is where it finally coalesced into, no, he is different.
He is a good guy.
Absolutely.
But yeah. So yeah, I also love that Kaladin's like, "Oh, you're gonna ignore me, Ann?" Just right into the the guy's like, "Son of a bee."
The other thing that's interesting is that Kaladin jumps in not when it's Adolin, but after Renarin joins in. Remember, Renarin is a member of Bridge 4.
Yeah.
Yep.
So he jumps in to protect one of his men.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I love but I just love how both instinctively it's just back to back, and it shows both of these guys are battle hardened. That even though they have no experience fighting side by side in reality, because even at the battle of I forget, it was the tower, I think it was called.
Tower. Yeah.
Yeah, they didn't fight side by side. But it's just both of them are so trained, they both understand instinctively, back to back, this is what we do.
Yep.
And frankly, that's actually a bigger that shows better for Adolin than it does Kaladin, because one of the things that I believe it's actually Adolin talks about how most of the other Latias don't know how to fight besides their spearmen, whereas Dalinar made sure that Adolin did.
Yep.
And it shows.
Back to back, they faced each other, drew their swords, and shot each other.
But yeah, so this is where things just get like just absolutely awesome. As it, we have Adolin, because the rest of it's from Kaladin's perspective, and basically it's like, all right, what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? And they're just trying to figure it out, and they finally shatter. It was Relis's cousin. I can't remember his name.
Yeah.
They shatter his breastplate, which makes it so that like it's sort of what holds everything else together. So it breaks. It's like you can't quite move because it's just you don't have the thing that carries the weight of the other stuff.
They broke the CPU.
Yeah, exactly. And so Kaladin just like the guy's like, yield, I yield.
Yeah,
louder. You got to say it louder.
Scream for me.
Say it so they can hear you.
Yeah.
But then he goes after him and he's like, give me your helmet.
And I love Kaladin's like, oh man, I hope he doesn't call my bluff.
Yeah.
Speaking of improvised weaponry.
Well, it's just such a cool idea because it's the helmet, but he's just like, all right, this can stand up against shard plate and shard blades. That's what it was made to do. And the fact that it forms around his hand anyway, so there's clearly some form of sentience in some form or another in it.
Although it also backfires because it starts sucking Kaladin's stormlight from him.
Right, but it's a double-edged blade because it takes his stormlight, but it also doesn't shatter when it should have.
Yeah, and so it's one of these things where. But I love when it happens, Kaladin's surprised, and I like that because it once again shows Kaladin's still new to this. And it's one of these things is if Kaladin showed up and they just won and it was easy, it goes again once the whole Gary Stu, Mary Sue problem of when people succeed all the time, when all their plans just magically come together, it makes the character unlikable.
And there's
Kaladin
no
and Adolin, Kaladin and Adolin and Shallan are all stumbling through this, trying to figure it out.
Yeah, the try-fail cycle is it's clear.
Yeah, and it keeps it. This entire fight is a never-ending just cascade of try and fail, It's part of what makes it so good and so tense.
Mm-hmm. There's very much a seat of the pants type of narrative. It's why people like the Uncharted games, because the characters are just going into stuff and failing, but still going. And there's something inspiring about that.
But yeah, I do love that Kaladin tries a bluff and it works. It's just like, Kaladin's like, I am fairly certain if I attack this guy, I will go to jail.
Well, it makes sense though. In the heat of the moment, the guy is still like, he's exhausted. He's lugging heavy shard plate. He's walking off, and this crazy guy comes at you saying, "Give me your helmet. Give me your helmet." Okay, just don't hurt me.
Yeah. Let alone he knows it'll come back or it'll regrow or whatever else. Even though he's going to lose his armor if they lose the fight, which happens.
Yeah. So yeah.
So I'm going to read this part. I love this. However, once a sufficient distance away, Kaladin turned and dashed back towards Adolin and the two men he was fighting. He left Rella standing there in an anxious pose, momentarily befuddled by Kaladin's retreating there. Adolin glanced at Kaladin, then nodded. The man in green turned with surprise as Kaladin advanced. He swung, and Kaladin caught the blow on the shard plate helm he carried, deflecting it. The man grunted as Adolin threw everything he had at the other shard bearer, the one in orange, slamming his weapon down against him again and again. For a short time, Adolin only had one foe to fight. Hopefully he could use that time well. Though his steps were lethargic and his plate was leaking stormlight had slowed to a trickle, his legs were nearly immobile. Green plate attacked Kaladin again, who deflected the blow off the helm, which cracked and began leaking stormlight. Relis came charging up the side, but didn't join the fight against Adolin. Instead, he thrust at Kaladin. First of all, it's just like, Relis is sick of this uppity, dark eyes, who has spilled several drops of his blood.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
and
cracked
his helm with it. I'm sure everyone's like, "What the crap?" Without a shard blade.
Yeah, It was like, "How did he do it?" Now Kaladin broke both his legs to do it.
But then thankfully they got fixed. Yeah, because he did a power kick where he just jumps at him.
He lashed. I think he lashed himself 4 times or something. It was,
which is why his legs and feet broke.
Yeah.
Oof.
Kaladin grit his teeth, dodging to the side, feeling the blade pass in the air. He had to buy Adolin time. Moments. He needed moments. The wind began to blow around him. Syl returned to him, zipping through the air as a ribbon of light. Kaladin ducked another blow, then slammed his improvised shield against the blade of the other, throwing it back. Sand flew in the air as Kaladin leapt back, a shard blade biting the ground before him. Wind, motion. Kaladin fought 2 shard bearers at once, knocking their blades aside with the helm. He couldn't attack. He didn't dare to try attack. He could only survive, and in this, the wind seemed to urge him. Instinct. Then something deeper guided his steps. He danced between those blades, cool air wrapping around him, and for a moment, he felt impossibly that he could have dodged just as well if his eyes had been closed.
That's just crazy.
I can't remember who it was. I want to say it was, I'm blanking on his name. I don't know. He does a bunch of Brandon Sanderson and fantasy book content. He talks about Brandon Sanderson's writing style. Because Brandon gets criticized as, his writing style's not very
purple.
His prose is very basic.
Mm-hmm.
He makes the argument that it's not basic, it's economical. That what Brandon's trying to do is sort of step away from getting in the way between the story and the reader.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's like, this especially works in action scenes where you're trying to convey that heat of the moment, that instinct. And here, he doesn't even describe it. Things like where he just says wind, motion. Kaladin fought 2 shard bearers at once. It conveys the tone of what's happening without getting too descriptive and making it, which would slow the scene down.
It's the show don't tell.
Yeah.
He's not using all these adverbs, which honestly, as a guy with an English degree, adverbs are clunky.
Yeah.
Adverbs,
too many.
If you rely on adverbs too much, it takes away from the impact of what you're writing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Then going further, Greenplate saw his opening. This is after Kaladin's run out of Stormlight, and raised his blade. Someone hopped on him from behind. Kaladin watched, dumbfounded, as Adolin grappled Greenplate. I tried to combine those three into one word. Grappled Greenplate, latching onto him. Adolin's armor hardly leaked any Stormlight anymore. His Stormlight was exhausted. It seemed that he could barely move. The sand nearby displayed a set of lurching tracks that led from Orange Plate, who lay in the sand defeated. So we don't even get to see it, but he needed to buy Adolin time. He got him time, and Adolin did what he does, which is win one-on-one fights.
Yep. And then he's like, all right, now I'm going to go take out one of the ones that's fight dealing with you.
Just slowly, just walking through quicksand, and then aha! It's like, hey, let go of me. No.
You're just gonna fall down now.
I love this idea because it just feels like it's very Looney Tunes, where it just like locks up and it's like just slowly tilting over.
Well, Adolin knows exactly what he's got.
Yep.
And he just takes the most pragmatic route, and it's brilliant.
Yeah, let's see here. What Greenplate cursed, swatting at Adolin. The prince held on, and his plate had locked, as they called it, becoming heavy and almost impossible to move. The two teetered, then toppled over. Kaladin looked at Relis, who glanced from the falling Greenplate to the man in orange, then to Kaladin.
It's like, what? Oh no, it's just me now.
I just love that moment of the two of them just looking. It's like, well, here we are.
There we go.
At the same time, if you're Relis, you have no fear.
Well, and again, what Adolin has done is he's taken a weakness and turned it into a strength, because he's like, I'm going to get to the point where I cannot move.
Mm-hmm.
If I can't move, neither can he.
I'm going to take him out.
And it's also putting all your faith in the guy that up until now, they've had, a bit of a stormy relationship.
You never really trusted.
Yeah. And now he's giving him all the trust.
Mm-hmm.
And then so Kaladin looked at Relis, who glanced. Relis turned and dashed across the sands towards Renarin. Relis understands who, Relis has over the course of this fight realized who Kaladin is, and so he's like, I'm going to use that advantage.
Yep. And
he goes right to, okay. The boy looked up. Storms. He'd been crying. Was he hurt? He didn't look it. Surrender, Kaladin said as he trying to run faster, summoning every drop of energy from his muscles that felt drained, exhausted from being inflated by Stormlight. The lad focused on Relis, who was bearing down on him, but he said nothing. Instead, Renarin dismissed his blade. Relis skidded to a stop, raising his blade high over his head towards the defenseless prince. Renarin closed his eyes and looked upward, as if exposing his throat. Kaladin wasn't going to arrive in time. He was too slow compared to a man in plate. Relis hesitated, fortunately, as if unwilling to strike Renarin.
Can we take a moment?
Yeah.
Compare this moment to the scene in Oathbringer, where Yasna comes
it's the same
for
thing.
For Renarin.
I was going to stop right there for that.
It's the exact same thing, because he's basically accepted his fate, said this is coming. Thinking I am flawed, I am not enough.
Mm-hmm.
In the first instance, he was relying on the mercy of someone who would have struck him down. In the second instance, he relied on the mercy of someone who was known to be cold and calculating, who saw the boy that he was and didn't strike him down.
Yep.
I think this is also a moment where we see who Relis is. He isn't really this bloodthirsty cutthroat.
Mm-hmm.
We know from Rhythm of War, he's an abused son.
Yes, he is.
And he's the son of the one that Yasna kills.
Yep.
And then they bring immediately back to life.
Harder wit.
That's right. Yeah.
Yep. And so he thinks he's this guy, but he gets to the point of the cold-blooded murder and he can't do it.
Mm-hmm. Which is good to set this up here, because then in Rhythm of War, we're more likely to trust him.
Yeah. I'd totally forgotten that connection.
Because if this scene hadn't been there in Rhythm of War, we wouldn't have trusted him that much. But when we see this moment of hesitation, even if it's subconsciously, it plants a seed in us saying, okay, there's a human here.
Yeah.
And
he's not a puppy kicker.
Yeah. And when his father, who is a puppy kicker, is taken out and he's put in place, there's that sigh of relief that, okay, we have someone who's not just going to go off. We have someone who's not a sociopath.
Yeah.
Heading up this house.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He's, like many other people, flawed.
Mm-hmm.
But then we get to this. Relis hesitated, fortunately, as if unwilling to strike Renarin. Kaladin arrived. Relis spun around and swung at him instead. Kaladin skidded to his knees in the sand, momentum carrying him forward a short distance as the blade fell. He raised his hands and snapped them together, catching the blade.
He saw that done somewhere before.
Yep.
And this is one of those...
and it went very differently this time.
Yeah. But the thing is, this is another great way that Brandon does storytelling. We see Dalinar, who is a man at... Like, we've seen him at his peak. And so when Dalinar does it, it's Dalinar who has seen everything battle-wise. Mm-hmm. And so he does it. It's like he has the experience. Now we have Kaladin, who's at his physical peak. I mean, look, I mean, the picture we showed earlier, he has 8 abs. He's at his physical peak. So he saw it. He has the instincts. He's shown that Kaladin has the skill to pull this off, and he just boom catches it.
But the thing that's cool about this is Kaladin saw it and was dumbstruck.
Yes,
like this is the kind of thing Kaladin knows. This is a desperate move that not many people can pull off.
Yeah.
And that also shows where Kaladin was at this point, because this is a last ditch move.
It's because
if you do it wrong, you die.
The last clap.
Mm-hmm. And so you see him doing this act of desperation, but succeeding, because that's what Kaladin does. When things get the most desperate, Kaladin succeeds.
Yeah.
Like you said, it ends a little differently. Catching the blade. Screaming. Why could he hear screaming inside his head? Was that Syl's voice? It reverberated through Kaladin. That horrible, awful screech shook him and made his muscles tremble. He released the shard blade with a gasp, falling backwards. Relis dropped the blade as if bitten. He backed away, raising his hands to his head. What is it? What is it? No, I didn't kill you. He shrieked as if in great pain and ran across the sands and pulled open the door to the preparation room, fleeing inside. Kaladin heard the screams echoing in the hallways there long after the man had vanished.
Now that's an interesting thing, because Kaladin has a live spren. He touches a dead shard blade.
It freaks
and
out.
he hears the screams.
Mm-hmm.
The guy also holding on to it.
Relis doesn't have a live spren, but holding the dead shard blade, he also hears the screams. And what he hears is, in response to, is, I didn't kill you. So he's not hearing Syl scream. He's hearing his own shard blade scream.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And well, it's interesting because it highlights that everyone holding the blade could hear the scream. It's just that they don't scream until someone who shouldn't be touching it touches it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting moment. And it's like, okay, maybe you overreacted a little. It's like, no, he just heard voices in his head out of nowhere, right after an emotional moment where he was about to kill someone in cold blood.
Yeah.
So he's already in an emotionally shattered state. Well, and then that happens.
And again, this kind of feeds into what we know of Relis going into when he takes, control of his house in Rhythm of War. He's been through some stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the arena grew still. High Lord Relis Ruthar, the judge, finally called out, sounding disturbed. Forfeits by cause of leaving the dueling arena. Do you think you'd be a little disturbed after that? Just like, what just happened?
Mm-hmm.
He's screaming about killing and what?
Yeah. Kaladin climbed, trembling to his feet. He glanced at Renarin. The lad was fine, then slowly crossed the arena. Even the watching dark eyes had grown silent. Kaladin was pretty sure they hadn't heard that strange scream, though. It had only been audible to him and Relis. He stepped up to Adolin and Greenplate. Stand up and fight me, Greenplate shouted. He lay face up on the ground. Adolin buried beneath them, holding on in a wrestling grip. Kaladin knelt down. Greenplate struggled more as Kaladin retrieved his side knife from the sand and pressed the tip of it to the opening of Greenplate's armor. The man grew perfectly still. It's like, hey, you guys wanted till surrender, right? So here we are.
Surrender? Yeah.
You gonna start singing? You go. Or, well, actually, you going to yield? Kaladin growled, or do I get to kill my second shard bearer?
Ooh, that line! I loved that line. That it's like, wait, you killed one? Oh dear. Yeah.
Well, and again, he doesn't have plate or blade.
Yeah. But just saying that, it's exactly. Silence. Storms curse you both, Greenplate finally shouted inside his helm. This wasn't a duel, it was a circus. Grappling is the way of the coward. It's like, says the guy who was fighting 4-on-1 and happy to betray a friend.
Dude. It's like, really?
Because this is Yakimov specifically, the one in green.
Mm-hmm.
Kaladin pressed the knife in further. I yield, the man yelled, holding his hand up. Storm you, I yield. Bright Lord Yakimov yields, the judge said. The day goes to Bright Lord Adolin.
So satisfying. And of course, Brandon can't let us sit with that victory.
No, he can't. But we do get some awesome, character development. Because first, Kaladin and Adolin just start laughing.
Well, that's what happens after suddenly the adrenaline just floods out and you're like, oh, that just happened.
I'm not dead.
Yeah. No.
You almost died.
Yeah.
So did you.
They just start laughing. And then he's like, okay, man, get the armor off. He's like, get your armor to do that. Like, it just shows once again, Kaladin still is very sassy to
he's got that chip on his shoulder. He's like, I'm not one of your servants.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, dude, get my armor off. There's more to this. He's, oh yeah, that thing was Sadia.
Step 2, yeah.
And let's see. Let me find.
Then he starts getting ideas and thinking.
Man. Very a dangerous pastime.
I know.
See, where is it? Warrior, duel master, the king shouted. I am greatly pleased by what you have accomplished today. This was a fight the like of which that hadn't been seen in Althkar for generations. You have pleased your king greatly. Cheering. I could do this, Kaladin thought. I offer you a boon, the king proclaimed, pointing to Adolin as the cheering quieted. Name what you wish of me or of this court. It shall be yours. No man, having seen your display, could deny you.
Can we just take a moment? Because clearly Elokar is not the world's greatest actor. This is all pomp, and it's just sort of this is Elokar being his most trying to be kingly and not quite getting there. And that comes just from the dialogue.
Yeah.
Because it's a bit more flowery, but it's also just a bit awkward. And I'm like, Brandon, you've done a great job here.
It's a little too rigid as well.
Yes. And I don't know. There's just something about that I feel is very well crafted.
Yeah. Well, it highlights who Elokar is at this time, where he's been living in his dad's shadow. The dad who even Dalinar views as this legend, because he's the man who united all of Alethkar. Like it's
a big deal.
Yeah.
But the thing is, he's also trying to be helpful.
Yeah.
He's bad at it, but he's trying. And it's kind of the first step down the path of everybody getting mad at what happens to him in the next book.
Yeah. Well, because it's exactly what gets Kaladin to go save him. When he has that realization, it's like, why does Dalinar care about, everyone would be better. Like logically, he knows all the reasons why they should assassinate Elokar. And then he just in his head, he's trying. And then he realizes he's Dalinar's TN. And just that realization is what gets him there. Is Elokar's not a bad person; he is a weak person.
He's flawed
and he's a hurt person. He's damaged,
but he's trying to be better.
Yeah, he just doesn't know how, and he's been manipulated so many times. He doesn't trust himself. He doesn't trust anyone else. Like, he's just a mess.
Mm-hmm.
And so Adolin sought out Sadeas, who had stood and was making his way to the steps to flee. He understood.
He's like, oh no.
And he's like, oh no, I've seen this play. I've run this play.
I'm not here for
gotta
this.
get out of here. Far to the right, Amaram sat in his golden cloak. For my boon, Adolin shouts to the quiet arena, I demand the right of challenge. I demand the chance to duel High Prince Sadeas right here, right now, as redress for the crimes he committed against my house. Sadeas stopped upon the steps. A murmur ran through the crowd. Adolin looked as if he were going to say something more, but hesitated as Kaladin stepped up beside him.
Oh, it's like, oh, buddy. Oh.
And for my boon, Kaladin shouted, I demand the right to challenge against the murderer Amaram. He stole from me and slaughtered my friends to cover it up. Amaram branded me a slave. I will duel him right here, right now. This is the boon I demand.
Oh.
And then you just hear bum bum ba-dum. Wow.
This reminds me of when you're having a conversation with someone that like you have diametrically opposed views, right? And you're talking to your friend and explaining points, and they seem to be coming around, and then suddenly another friend comes in and she's like, yeah, and this, and they just act basically like the loudest blowhard, and it kind of destroys your argument. That's kind of what happened right here.
Now, it should be noted that Elhokar should have just ignored Kaladin, and just
but
moved forward.
We'll come back to that. We'll deal with that in a minute, and then
it is noted by Dalinar in the later conversation,
and Adolin as well.
Adolin
goes as far as to say Elhokar is an idiot, and he does it in front of like the jail cell guards, and they're sort of like shuffling awkwardly, like, I don't want to be here for this conversation. I do not want to be here.
I heard nothing. Well, especially because they probably don't disagree either.
Yeah.
But they don't want to be seen not disagreeing.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to end on the note. Amaram stood up, then stumbled back. He hadn't recognized Kaladin until just then. You should have killed me, Kaladin thought. The crowd started to shout and yell. Arrest him, the king bellowed over the din. Perfect, Kaladin grinned, until he noticed the soldiers were coming for him and not Amaram.
Well, and when Kaladin speaks up, Adolin visibly.
Let's see, where is it? Beside him, Adolin groaned.
Yep.
It's because one of those again. I've got it. I'm going in for the kill shot. Oh.
It's like when that friend is just really feeling it, like he's on fire. His jokes have landed all night, and it's like he's been riding the line of like what's appropriate all night, and then you see him bow up. You're like, oh no, he's gonna go over. He's got to go over, and you can't stop it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm suddenly thinking of Tommy Boy, where he's like given the whole riding along, like, and he does the second time, and you see David Spade trying to like hold him back, and he's like shaking him off, all happy, like, yeah, I'm gonna do this.
Yeah. But it's just, again, that kind of solidifies the friendship where Adolin is just like, he's coming from the right place, but he has no idea what he's doing right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's court intrigue. It gets the whole thing when they were planning this whole line of attack. Kaladin's there for the entire planning session, and he's like, I don't get it. This doesn't make any sense. Like, this is all made up. This is just a game. And then Adolin's the one who makes it clear to him. He's like, yes, it is a game, but it's a game that Sadeas has agreed to play.
Mm-hmm.
So
and for Kaladin, that's what made it make sense. Kaladin forgot at that moment it's a game.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the thing that I really like, though, is that Adolin's response here to Kaladin doing this is not anger.
Yeah.
He's not mad at Kaladin. He understands why Kaladin is doing what he's doing. He knows what the fallout is going to be, but he doesn't fault Kaladin for saying it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
He understands Kaladin's just he's too jacked up at the moment. He's not thinking straight.
And that's the difference between Adolin and Elhokar. And I think that their two reactions being right there, it just, again, it shows who each of the characters is very well. Because Adolin and Elhokar are kind of foils for each other. You know, there's the son of the man who was king, and there's the son of the man of his brother who should be king. It's really, really interesting the way that dynamic is built.
The other way they're foils is they're both men who agree they shouldn't be king, which is an interesting dynamic.
Yeah,
but unfortunately, one of them is.
Yeah, unfortunately, one is king.
But yeah, cool. That fight scene is just glorious.
It's phenomenal. It's one of the best moments of the entire Cosmere.
Does anyone here watch Death Battle?
No.
It's a series on YouTube where they basically just pit people against each other and they fight. They have recently started. Yeah. Yeah.
This is a hypothetical.
Yeah. Well, so
comedy.
So they've had a couple episodes now where there's an actual they're like a stunt troupe that they've gotten for a couple of ones, and they've done live action death battles where they recreate the fight with stuntmen, and it's really cool. And part of me almost wants Brandon, like, if he can't make these things into actual full-fledged movies, it'd be kind of cool for Brandon to take scenes like this and invest in just recreating the scene. Unfortunately, now we know that he has to do a bunch of NBA players to accurately display the Alethi.
I feel like if they made the movies, that's one change that they would make in the adaptation.
Just make them a little bit. Well, I mean, but if you had
don't want the entire team being made up from the cast of the LA Lakers. Call.
You are killing it tonight.
I'm doing great.
I was gonna say Space Jam. You know,
yeah.
But I mean, if they were to make it, you could always just, if everybody's taller, then you can scale it down and to say the rocks are bigger and the trees are bigger, and it's just fine.
Yeah.
Well, everything else on the planet is bigger as well, right?
In scale, they'd probably be close-ish still.
But even if you're crossing over stuff, I think they'd probably make them in a film or visual adaptation. They'd probably just make them near the same size.
Yeah.
Or just do camera tricks. Like you can, look at the Hobbit.
It depends on how big of a crossover it is.
Yeah.
You know, if you have a lot of Rasharans and a lot of Scadrians, say, that's a lot of camera work. If you have just one, Rasharan among a bunch of Scadrians or vice versa, it's more doable.
You just have some boxes.
Well, it's like they're bigger. You don't have to have them 6'11" bigger.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not hobbits and elves. It's short
baseball players
men and tall men.
Yeah, it's baseball players to NBA players. You know, you could scale down. You could do it.
Yep.
You just can't cast Tom Cruise in anything other than Scadrian roles.
Yeah, well,
the joke is he's short.
All right. Well, we do love hearing from our listeners, so please keep sending us your questions. You can ask us about the Cosmere. You can drop us your ideas for topics that you'd like us to discuss during the show. Is there a particular scene that you would like us to delve into? Let us know. While you're at it, we would love to hear feedback about how you think we are doing, as well as any interesting theories you might have about what's going on in the Cosmere. You can send any questions and suggestions in a brief, concise email to cosmerestudies@gmail.com, and hopefully we could read that as part of the show. We do have a P.O. Box at the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies, P.O. Box 970063, Orem, Utah 84097. We've also got our own personal projects, so Jordan, why don't you start us off and let us know what you're doing outside of the show?
Sure. Yes. You can find me on youtube.com/splice stream. Rhymes with ice cream. We're doing more amiibo content. Been doing more shorts recently because the YouTube algorithm demands it of me. And we're going to be trying to do a new series of giving people advice to amiibo. But what I'm most excited about is I finally got my challenge coins for my subscribers over on Ko-Fi. For those of you watching via YouTube, you can see it not very well, but I've got these for my Giga climbers that I think are awesome. But we also have challenge coins for just regular subs that go up by month. It's through one of my viewers called Ammonite. He has a laser cutting side gig he does, and he's made these, and I've gotten to see the machine in progress. It is so cool. Cutting things with light. How can you not see that as being awesome?
It's why light weavers are going to be very dangerous at some point.
I don't know if their light could go like that, but the very
It can.
It can.
It's confirmed.
Where?
In a Word of Brandon.
Where? I don't remember that one, man.
Well, let me find it.
Yeah, I gotta hear that one. But no, it's been a ton of fun. So if you like challenge coins, come by my stream. We'll let you know how to get them. As Bill, I need to vamp apparently more. Stuff, driving.
Do you want me to talk about my stuff while we're
yes, Amy?
while we're
Oh my goodness,
okay.
please, yes.
So my
Save
Facebook
me.
is.
I'm drowning.
You're welcome. My Facebook is Coincidence Cosplay and Props. My Twitter is @CoincidenceCosp because my name is too long. My Instagram is @coincidence_cosplay, and my TikTok is @coincidencecosplay, and my website is www.coincidencecosplay.com. So I am currently not at my house, if you couldn't guess from the difference of books. These are my dad's books. So I'm not going to make a lot of progress this week, but I'm actually going to try and post some of my older stuff that's just sitting on my phone, not getting posted. But I have finished my daughter's Hobbit costume. My Nazgul is done. I need to make my son's Nazgul now. Oh, so that's going to be fun. Little tiny gauntlets. I'm not looking forward to that. I'm planning to film finally my D&D group. I just need to make a few more scripts and I just need to do it because otherwise I'm going to keep putting it off. So hopefully there will be very cool stuff in the next few weeks. So yeah. Especially on my TikTok, which only has like 6 videos and they're just random in there. So yeah.
So the Word of Brandon comes from July 3rd, 2016. It's just a miscellaneous.
Wow.
There was a discussion, and he says, but he was happy to remind me that things will get pretty interesting when light weavers discover lasers and start using them in combat.
Oh,
The discussion also says, but the ultimate form, which Brandon said would be too much to be practical both in needed stormlight and application, would be the control of gamma radiation.
Yeah.
If this could be harnessed, light weavers could literally become mini nukes or death guns. The biggest downside to making gamma radiation would be the damage to the light weaver would most likely suffer. So gamma radiation is impractical, but it's a fun thought experiment.
Shalon Hulk, that's scary, you know.
So
I don't think gamma radiation works on Marvel principles.
Oh, but it'd be fun.
But Brandon has said light weavers will discover lasers and use them in combat.
Oh man, that's gonna be awesome.
So like I said, they're dangerous.
Well, look, anytime you let people control fundamental forces, it's
like gravity.
Gravity. Marvel was the king of this in the early days, where they would make villains with just like, Molecule Man. He can transform molecules. Like, not understanding what that is. Magneto. He can make magnetic fields or something. And it's
Speed.
Just, yeah. And then you just start going through, and then like writers who actually took like a physics course in high school got a hold of it, and they're like, so this is busted.
Yeah.
Yep. It's one of the reasons that Flash is actually one of the most overpowered superheroes ever.
Yeah.
But that's a discussion for another time and place.
Death Battle, for example.
As for myself, I have another podcast with my friend Dylan, and we talk about board games. It is called The Innkeeper's Table, and we have new episodes every Friday morning. The most recent episode, we talked about recording our plays. So like when you actually keep track of the statistics and all the different stuff when you play games, who won, what factions you were using, where you played, who you're playing with, all that stuff. And then our next episode coming out this Friday is a game spotlight on one of my favorite games and a game that I believe is very, very underappreciated in the hobby, Arcane Academy, which was a collaboration between Eric Lang, who did Rising Sun and Ankh and Blood Rage and the XCOM game, and I'm blanking on his name, Kevin Wilson, who did Mistborn House War.
It's a pretty impressive collection there.
But it's a really fun game. It's actually much simpler than either of those, but I think it's very elegant and a lot of fun. Basically, everyone is playing. It's not Harry Potter licensed, but essentially everyone is are students in a magic academy, and they're all trying to be Hermione Granger because they all want to be the bestest.
Nice.
So, for those of you who want to support the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies, but you cannot become patrons, we'd love it if you'd just let your friends know about the show. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, to like and subscribe over on youtube.com/Cosmere Studies. And if you want to toss us a good review anywhere you listen to us, we would love that. Also, head on over to store.streamelements.com/Cosmere Studies to buy our merch, our swag, our stuff. Behold, our stuff. All right. Final thoughts.
If I was in a duel, I'd totally want Adolin and Kaladin with me because I would be hopeless. So yeah.
If I was in a duel, I would want Marcy with me because she'd be at 500 paces and just snipe someone.
Oh yeah, yeah, she'd be good too.
Yeah.
Is it cheating? Yes, but I'm in a duel. I don't care about the rules. I want to live.
Also, Kaladin basically Falcon punches a guy, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Special thanks to our patron producer, Mim's Laundry Service. You take care of your shard plate, we'll take care of what you wear underneath. In addition to the live episodes of the show that stream on twitch.tv/Innkeeper's Table every 2 weeks on Monday nights at 7:30 p.m. Pacific Time, 10:30 p.m. Eastern, listeners can find our videos on YouTube or audio versions of the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and just about any other service that carries podcasts by searching for Cosmere Studies. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook under the profile @Cosmere Studies. Next time, Amy's going to take the lead in a discussion about parenting in the Cosmere, as the only one of us who's actually a parent.
You knew this was going to happen, right? So, yeah.
We do have...
It was pretty apparent.
Shame on you. We have plenty of examples of both good and parents in the Cosmere, so there is definitely a lot to talk about. So be there for the live discussion at 7:30 p.m. Pacific Time, 10:30 p.m. Eastern on Monday, August 15th, 2022 at www.twitch.tv/Innkeeper's Table. Until then, on behalf of Amy, Jordan, and myself, thanks for listening. And remember, there's always another secret.